So I've been using i3 since the day that I started using Arch Linux, and today what I wanted to talk about was basically what my workflow with this window manager is and just how I actually go about using it. So if you're new to this channel, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. I'm trying to hit 100 subs by the end of the year, and we are getting close to hitting it by the end of November, so any help will be really appreciated. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So, I've probably mentioned it before, but I'm actually like a very boring person when it comes to the way that I use my tiling window manager. So, if we swap back over, so I guess we can start with what a tiling window manager actually is if you're somehow unaware of it. So basically, a floating window manager, for example, you create a window and then you can drag it and resize it however you want. But a tiling window manager, what happens with those is you create a window, and then it will take up your entire screen, right? And then you create a second window, and then that will then tile to the second part, and you can do things like move them down to the bottom and things like that. I've described what the different types of window managers are in a separate video, so I'll put that up on the top corner. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and check that out. So the reason that I said I'm really boring with the way that I use my window manager is because I actually ignore most of the features of i3. So i3 also comes with like a tabbing mode and a stacking mode and a floating window mode, but I don't use those most of the time. Pretty much all I do is I create the workspaces that I use. I put like usually maybe one or two windows on there, and then I go to another one. So I guess we can go over basically how I typically do stuff. So if I'm just generally working with my computer, I will have one window where I have my terminal open. Usually that'll be window 1. I'll normally have something on window 2, but I've actually got OBS and all that on my window 2 right now, so I'll go to window 3 instead. And then I'll maybe have something like my web browser, and then on another screen after that, I'll usually have something like LF open. And then I can just use that as my file manager. So typically, I don't actually use the tiling part of my window manager. There will be times when I do use it. Like, for example, say I'm working on something in here. Like, I don't know, I am looking at something in my vimrc, and then I have a separate window. I don't usually have it on the bottom. I basically never actually stack them like this. I will always just stack them horizontally. So then I might have something like, I don't know, the man page for NeoVim open, and then I can look through what things in here will do. So typically this is the most I will ever actually tile. Occasionally I will do 3. Typically when I'm doing 3 windows, that's when I'm doing development work. So I'll typically have, because I do web development, so I'll have one screen open for Git, I'll have another screen open for my front-end web server, so that'll usually be like my whatever comes with React. I think it's Node something or other, doesn't matter. And then I will usually have my back-end server, which lately has been PHP. So at most, this will be the most I will ever actually tile. I don't usually tile any more than this, and there's actually a couple reasons for this. One, I only have a 1080p screen, so when you start tiling more than that, it sometimes gets difficult to actually see what's happening without zooming in and then really not getting much effective use of the screen. And also, I'm working off a laptop right now, so even though I could put stuff on the screen and have it smaller and then just zoom in, I don't really have much physical screen real estate to actually work with. So by default, i3 uses dmenu as its application launcher. That opened on the wrong screen. Let's see if we open it up here. Yeah, here we go. So it uses dmenu as its application launcher, but I never actually use this because what I do, so if we bring up LF, I've got that bound to Super Alt R, and that'll bring up LF. I know that's a weird one. It's a hotkey that existed from back when I was using Ranger, so I just didn't bother changing it. So if we go into my i3 config, launch programs. Okay, so down here, I have got basically commands to open up every single program that I use regularly. So I've even got some things that are terminal programs, so like NVim and LF obviously, and basically everything that I use, even just semi-regularly. Like I don't really open Also Mixer much because I've got hotkeys bound to actually modify my audio settings, but even that I've got bound to a key because it's just easier for me to basically have keys bound to everything that I use, because I don't use that many programs. As you can see, I'm by far not using all the keys on my keyboard, so it's easier for me to do that, so I can just quickly open stuff up. I've got a method for how I segregate my hotkeys. So all of my application launch hotkeys, except for one of them, which I might change, is Super, or Windows key, whatever you want to call it, Alt, and then a key after that. So for Also Mixer, it's Super Alt A, Spotify, it's Super Alt S, and then you can see the rest. We'll zoom in on that a little bit so you can see it better. And that's how I keep those keys segregated. And my general hotkeys, I've got bound to Super and then a letter. And then if there is a, I guess, alternate version of it, so say for my, what's one that's a good example? Raising and lowering my headphone volume. So raising the volume is Mod P, and lowering it is Mod Shift P. So I've got those keys in a, I guess, they're grouped together in a way that also keeps them separate from other keys, just so I can easily remember what they are. So while we're in this file, I guess we can go over some of the stuff that I'm actually doing within my i3 config. I'll go up to some of the other stuff in a minute, but right now we'll just go over what's here. So I've got my bar placed on the bottom, as you can see, and then I've got that as i3 blocks. I will probably go over that maybe later in the video, or maybe in a separate video, because there is a lot to go over in that one as well. So in here, I'm opening up programs every single time that my i3 blocks is open. So I'm opening up my transmission daemon, transmission RSS, which, because transmission doesn't have an RSS feed built into it, this program exists, so you can load stuff into it like that. I've got my Wi-Fi applet. I load up my X resources file, I set my wallpaper, and I open up my compositor. And I also set my cursor speed so I can have it at the setting that I like it to have. Then we've got things like my audio settings, my script to mount an Android device, my script to set up multi-monitor support, opening up my bookmark and my search programs, which I've gone over in separate videos before. I don't think they were very good videos because I did them a couple months ago, and a lot of those videos are absolute garbage, so maybe don't watch them. But if you really want to, go ahead. I've got keys in here to shut down and reboot my system, update my packages, open up a Python shell. Basically every single script that I run on a regular basis, most of my system configuration scripts actually, I have just got bound to hotkeys, because I don't want to have to deal with actually running those scripts manually. If I can just bind them to a key, that'll save me a couple of seconds here and there, or a fraction of a second here and there, and it just speeds everything up. And I think that's one of the major benefits, not just of i3, of just using a tiling window manager in general, because it kind of gets you into the habit of using your keyboard a lot more than you would with a floating window manager. Obviously, they have their sort of hotkeys and you can bind stuff in them, but because it's very similar to the Windows sort of style, a lot of people, I guess, will just keep working within a Windows style where you don't really worry about hotkeys as much. You try to do stuff more with your mouse. Whereas with a tiling window manager, you worry less about the mouse and do more with your keyboard. So, for example, say I've got two instances of Vim open. So if we bring up, I don't know, my Vim RC. So if I want to swap between these, I could use my cursor, or I could just use Mod and L and Mod and H and just jump between them. So the other stuff that I have in my i3 blocks config are mainly just the general hotkeys for moving around the application. So we'll go right to the top. I probably should have done it in this order to begin with. So I've got my mod key set up here, that's just set to the super key. I've got my font for my i3 bar down here and also status bar up the top, and that is Source Code Pro Medium because that is the greatest font. I don't really care what anyone else has to say about it, I like it. So here's just setting the colors for my focused and unfocused window borders. I don't really use floating stuff. We've got a key in here to just kill my window. D menu, just in case there's a program that I want to open up that I don't have in my program list. And then just basic movement keys, toggling full screen, nothing too special in here. My different workspaces, my movement between the workspaces, moving screens between the workspaces, reloading my config, and then resizing the window. So resizing windows, I use occasionally. I typically will work with windows with just the default size, but there's a couple of times here and there where I actually will resize. So the typical situation for this is when I have OBS open. So I'll bring up another instance of OBS. Ooh, that's looking fancy. And then I will say on the other screen, I'll have my file manager. So we'll bring that open. I probably shouldn't have this recording at the same time. It's going to look weird, doesn't matter. And then we can bring up my folder where I'm actually recording the video to, so I can just make sure that the video is actually recording. And typically I don't need half the screen for OBS and half the screen for my file manager, so I will then just make the file manager smaller. So if it's just like that, I can see the video is actually there and the file is actually getting bigger, so it is recording. So that's pretty much the only time I ever actually use resizing. I know that there's a bunch of other situations where I could be using it, but typically the reason that I'm using a tiling window manager is because I am generally just fairly lazy with the way that I like having my windows laid out. Basically my reason for that is that I have more important things that I want to worry about. And if I can just leave the layout of my windows to something else and I can worry about getting some actual work done, then I'm absolutely going to do that. I don't really want to have to worry about where my windows are placed. As long as I can see everything on my screen, or I can swap to another workspace where I can see everything there, then that's all I really need from a window manager. So I think the last thing to go over is really just what's in my i3 blocks bar. So I've gone over some of this stuff before, so I'm not going to actually go over my actual config folder. I'll just go over actually what's here. So I've got the number of packages I've got to upgrade. We've got my number of torrents that I've got downloading, paused, and seeding. My memory and usage, and the memory or the storage left in my home drive. My current Wi-Fi connectivity rating, I guess, my current download speed, my current upload speed, my current CPU usage and my temperature, my laptop's battery, the master volume of my system and my headphone volume, the brightness of my screen, the weather, and the date and time. So nothing too special there, it's just a bunch of basic stuff that I wanted to have on my bar. A lot of it I did pinch from the i3 Blocks configuration website, or some other stuff in there is based on some stuff that Luke Smith has done before. I think mainly the packages and the torrents one was. Most of the other stuff I either came up with myself or I pinched from that i3 Blocks GitHub page, basically. So I think that's pretty much everything for this video. So I know that I'm not really going over any super complicated stuff lately. It's because I've got exams right around the corner, I've got assignments and stuff to work on, so I don't really have much time to prep videos, but I still hope that the videos that I'm putting out have been interesting lately. But in a couple of weeks, they'll definitely get a lot more complicated. I want to do some stuff on some bash scripting, and I want to do a lot more software showcases where I actually try out some of this interesting stuff that people have been recommending to me and see if I can fit it into my workflow or come up with just interesting ways that it could be used. So keep your eyes out for those ones. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below, let me know what you think. And if you want to see any new videos when they come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. But, as always, YouTube can never be trusted to push updates to anyone, so also go follow my Twitter and my Mastodon and you'll probably get updates there. So up in the corner, I will put the playlist that this video is in, so you might find some other videos that you're interested in. It'll probably be my Linux Rising playlist, so go check that out. And I think that is pretty much everything for me, so I'm out.